Okay, we're back with day 2 of our writing. So yesterday we covered the circle map, which again is our brainstorm map that we use to brainstorm ideas for our topic. So you're going to want to review the map with your kiddo. Your goal is to ask them questions like, what's the big idea or the topic that we're writing about? And then you want to ask them to retell the different ideas that they came up with on their circle map. So our maps are used as almost like a note-taking guide for your student so that way they can talk in complete sentences. So, for example, if I put brown hair here, you would say as a student, you would want to put the topic with the idea here. So it would say something like, Mrs. Diaz has brown hair. Mrs. Diaz has green eyes. Mrs. Diaz can play volleyball. Mrs. Diaz can exercise. Mrs. Diaz is a girl. Mrs. Diaz is 36. Mrs. Diaz is nice. Okay. Mrs. Diaz has family, something like that. And so your kiddo would want to restate those ideas in complete sentences. So we really use these maps to help support talking off the map is what we call it. And in order to be able to write, you have to be able to talk off your map. So the first thing your kiddo needs to be able to do is restate their ideas on their map. And I always remind them, okay, we're not just saying brown hair, green eyes, play volleyball. We want to write or we want to speak in complete sentences. So you'll do that first. That's the first step you'll do. And then once you guys do that, you'll move down into the tree map. So the tree map is used for organizing our ideas. And you can see in our class, we've talked about the tree map having branches, and the branches lead into each new detail. So we have our big idea, again, that house. So you're going to ask them, what's our big idea today? And they're going to write their name. So I'm going to write my name in there. And again, my computer screen is going to mess with me a little bit here just because I'm typing into it. So there's my name. Mrs. Diaz is the big idea or the topic, and then your student would say their name. And now they're going to use this circle map to organize these ideas. And so really all they have to be able to do is when they spoke in that complete sentence, did they use the word can, has, or is in that sentence? And so I would first try to find all my can ideas. And so I would go back to my circle map and say, well, let me restate this sentence. Mrs. Diaz can, what can she do? She can play volleyball. So down here we would take that idea of play volleyball and we would write it here in that first box. So first your student is going to trace the word can, and then you're going to remind them that our first detail that we're writing about is something she can do, and we're going to write here play volleyball. Okay. And again, then you would go back to the circle map again, okay? And they can use the map to copy right off of it. So if you guys want, they can flip the paper back and forth to be able to see those letters. I wish that I could have copied this for you guys so they could have had it side by side, because that really does make it a little bit easier. If you have a way to copy your paper at home, like with a scanner, you can always do that to make it a little bit easier, because really they are copying these ideas right off of the map, just organizing them into that tree map now. So then we're going to go to the next idea. What else can Mrs. Diaz do? She can exercise. So now I'm going to take that word exercise and I'm going to write it into box number 2 because it's our second detail that stays within this branch of the tree map. So here we'll write exercise. Okay, and then we'll go back to the circle map again and we'll look at our next idea here. Mrs. Diaz, okay, and now we have to pick our next idea that we want to talk about. Has brown hair. So then I would go down to my map. Again, I'd say, oh, here's has. Let's trace it. Now we're writing our details for has, and now I'm going to write brown hair. Okay, and you can see how this process is going to repeat itself through the end of the map. So the kids are going to finish every single column of the tree map. Mrs. Diaz has green eyes. So I find that word has again. I match it up to that middle column of the map. That's my next detail for our has column. So I'm going to write green eyes. Okay, and if your kiddo only wrote 2 or 3 things in this map, that's completely okay. They are allowed, again, it's a brainstorm map, so they can come up with as many ideas as they can. In my snake writing group, I like them to at least be able to have, 2 or 3 ideas here. And then for my lions as well, 2 or 3 ideas. For my koalas, zebras, and our eagle groups, we try to shoot for 4 or 5 ideas. So those kiddos, again, we're working towards like the things that they're able to do within their level and the time that it takes them to get that done, because again, we don't want this to take 45 minutes. It should move pretty quickly because they are just copying. So then you're going to finish up going through the last couple ideas here. Mrs. Diaz is, since that's our next column. Now on this one, because I gave you the choice are or is, because some topics we'll be talking about a plural here, so we're going to have them circle is and trace is. And again, our detail flower means that we're looking for those details that relate to that word. Mrs. Diaz is a girl. So I'm going to go down here and write a girl. And then the next idea, Mrs. Diaz is 36. Okay, so we could put that in there. And your student might say 36 years old, or 5 or 6 years old. And then Mrs. Diaz is nice. Okay, and then I'd go back to my map and I'd say, did I get all of my ideas? And if I see anything that I missed, and the only thing I missed here is family, I'd say, well, let's try that one. Mrs. Diaz has a family. What column should that go in? Your kiddo should say the has column, and then we'd put it down here at the bottom. A family. Okay, so that's it for the day. We would want to be completing this whole map tomorrow, again, just because we're behind on days. Now, as we're learning how to do this, we will build up to being able to do this all in one day. In the classroom, we would probably do, for the first time that we learn this, we would probably just do a column a day. So, but because we're a little bit behind this week, I'm asking that you guys try to complete all 3 columns of the tree map, the can, has, and the is column for tomorrow, so that way we can stay on track with the writing for Friday, so that way we can be done, and I can show you how to do that final draft on Friday. So about tomorrow, this is what you're looking to complete. I'm sorry, this would be today for you guys. I'm filming the night before. And when they're done, you can always have your student go back and reread the map to you. Again, talking off the map is the most important thing. So now we would have them say, okay, tell me about your map. What's our big idea? Mrs. Diaz, let's go through the first detail. Tell me things that Mrs. Diaz can do. Mrs. Diaz can play volleyball. Mrs. Diaz can exercise. Okay, then you could ask them about the next column. Okay, what does this column say? Has. Mrs. Diaz has brown hair. Mrs. Diaz has green eyes. You also might have kids who are able to do 2-part sentences here. 2-part sentences are when a student says something like this. Mrs. Diaz has brown hair and green eyes. That's fine. They can absolutely list a 2-part sentence here if they're talking about it. Okay, and then last column, Mrs. Diaz is a girl. Mrs. Diaz is 36. And they might even say something like, she is nice, or I am nice, something like that when they're talking about it themselves. Okay, so I know we're kind of talking in the third person here, and that's okay as we're doing this, because again, I'm trying to teach them how to describe with that informative topic something. And so typically the kiddos would be doing this with me in the classroom. We would be doing this all about myself, and I would only be showing them my map, and then the next week we would do their maps. But since we don't have that option this week, we're kind of shortening and condensing, and I'm kind of making it so that they can get their own practice next week, or I'm sorry, this week. Okay, so again, if you guys have any questions for me about this map, please feel free to send me a message, and that is everything. All right, thank you so much.